Welcome back to From Portugal with Love. I'm your host, Lauren Covas, chef and first generation Portuguese American, and a passionate fan of all things food, culture, and community. Today's guest is someone I've been wanting to chat with for such a long time, Michael Benevides. Michael is a VP of Portugalia Marketplace in Fall River, Massachusetts, which is so much more than just a market. It's a cultural hub, it's a love letter to Portuguese heritage, it's a place that connects generations through food, music, and community. Michael's story is one of legacy, passion, and purpose. So let's dive right in. Michael, I am so happy that we finally made this happen. It's been a long time that we've been trying to plan this. I just want to get this out of the way first. I have not been to Portugali market yet, but that's changing because I'm coming up to you guys July 26th, and I can't
That's
wait
correct. Yep,
because I feel like I am going to be shopping.
absolutely.
I'm so
Well,
excited.
first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast. It's an honor to meet you as well, and I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And we're looking forward to the 27th. But yeah, you'll definitely have to bring your shopping bags, and if you don't have any, we have some for you. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, for our listeners who don't know what the Portugalian marketplace is, what I love to do is I need you to paint a picture. What's the vibe when someone walks through the doors? What can they expect? I call it a cultural hub, but I want you to dive in. And if you have to explain to someone who doesn't know what it is, what are you bringing to this marketplace?
Okay, so what it is well, so there's a little bit. This is our third iteration of the business. So the business started in 1988 in a three-car garage in the same neighborhood that we currently operate out of. We're in an old converted mill. It's a 20,000 square foot, well, it's a 30,000 square foot mill, of which the store occupies about 20,000 of that space. And when you first walk in, you'll see that it's an old converted mill. It's got a brick facade and it's got everything's exposed. And in the store, you have various departments. So when you walk in, we call that area the plaza, which is technically an outdoor space because we added on a contemporary structure to the existing old facade of the old mill. And it's in this plaza you'll find bulk bins of various Portuguese snacks like fava frita, pumpkin seeds, roasted pumpkin seeds, and dry beans and fruits and vegetables. And then we also have kind of a seasonal display in this entrance. So it's a way of, when people walk into the market, we want to obviously create a positive impression on people, so they walk in and see seasonality essentially. To the left of this plaza, we have our Ponto de Encontro, which is our cafe, which serves pastries, sandwiches, coffee, drinks, soft drinks, that kind of thing. It seats about anywhere between 25 to 30 people, and people can also consume our prepared foods in that cafe, and it's become a very popular spot in its own right. And then beyond that, we have our Casta Zitrig, which is our wine shop, where we have 1,700 SKUs of Portuguese wines, possibly the largest in the U.S. We've got all the regions represented. It's really comprehensive. It's a very comprehensive Portuguese wine library. We have like I said, all the regions represented. We have some really unusual wines as well. Some unicorns from Portugal. We have a whole wall that's dedicated to dessert wines, mainly made up of ports and Madeira wines. We also carry Portuguese spirits in that section. And then beyond that, we have our prepared food section, where we offer traditional prepared foods every day. We call it Cozinha Regional, so it's very traditional. It's polvo every day, octopus. It's bacalhau de Gomes de Sá, which was in the New York Times in 23. And then we have frango churrasco, and then the other plates vary depending on the day. Then we have our charcuteria and queijeria section, which is a counter where we have cured meats, sausages, and then cheeses. And then beyond that, we have our salt cod room, which has become sort of the most popular room in the business. It's a room that we've created, a space that we've created dedicated to salt cod. It's glassed in, and salt cod is displayed on a marble top. and people can walk into this room, choose a piece of fish, and we can chop it up for you.
You have the
Uh,
big saw.
we have the hand saws, and then we have a guillotine cutter that we imported from Portugal.
Oh
That
wow.
it's sort of the modern version, so we don't
Yeah.
have to really kill ourselves. You hit a couple of buttons, and it comes down and it chops the fish for you. So we chop the fish to order, and then if you exit through that salt cod room and you head towards the checkout, we have a little gift shop, design shop called Artigos, where we have very fine articles from Portugal, like fish alegre. But then we have a lot of contemporary Portuguese artisan wares, uh, soaps and scents and cork things and objects and that kind of thing. So that's kind of like how I envisioned a tour in my head. And when I do tours in the market, I walk people through in this manner. So yeah, like I said, 20,000 square foot store with a lot to offer, and primarily like a bulk of what we sell. I would say 80% of the goods we sell in store of Portuguese origin. So yeah, it's quite a bit.
That's awesome. And I'll tell you, looking on the website, like at
Mhm.
the pictures in the gallery, first of all, aesthetically, it is beautiful. Like
Thank you.
I really I love the barrels, the way the aisles are set up. It's very engaging. So I'm so excited, and I will be in the wine room, and then I will
Yeah.
be doing the meat and the cheese. But I asked about the saw because when I was a kid, I remember when I went to the fish market with my grandmother, they used to always put the bacalao on the board, and they would do it with the hand saw.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are they cutting the fish with the saw? But
Yeah, the bandsaw is too risky.
yeah,
It's an OSHA issue, so
right.
we opted for something a little safer. But growing up in the previous market, um, we had hand saws. And I did this so many times. I can't tell you how many cases of cod I've cut in my life.
Oh,
But it was hand cut, and it was just like manpower, just like
yeah.
driving this thing
Elbow
down.
grease in it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty intense, but yeah, here it was. We like I said, we created a whole experience around salt cod, and so it made sense for us to make this investment in this guillotine cutter, and it really comes in handy when the holidays, for example, where we have massive queues to get into that room. This guillotine cutter is like it's a lifesaver, and when
Oh,
it goes down, the guys who work in that department will let you know the minute it goes down
yeah,
because they rely so heavily on it.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, if you're okay, I wanted to ask you about kind of you came over to the States when you were just a baby, and you're
Correct.
originally from the Azores, San Miguel, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And growing up in Fall River, which is a huge Portuguese community, does that feel like home community, Portugal? Like, how do you feel about Fall River and
Yeah.
growing up there?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I grew up here in Fall River. I went to the public schools. We grew up in ultra Portuguese neighborhoods, like the neighborhood. Initially, we grew up in arguably the most Portuguese neighborhood, which is right off Columbia Street, and that's a street that has some old markets and some pretty well known Portuguese restaurants. Um, so I grew up there for a few years, and then my parents decided to move across town to another Portuguese neighborhood, less Portuguese say than that one, but still another Portuguese neighborhood. And it was as if in this neighborhood, it was a lot of people from one village in San Miguel that had basically uprooted in that village and then settled here in Fall River in this new neighborhood. And so there was a church close by St. Anthony of Padua, and of course, like Portuguese communities, always sort of circled or kind of around a church. And so I grew up in a very traditional Portuguese upbringing with a lot of kids of similar backgrounds. All our parents were factory workers because Fall River is primarily a factory town, textiles. So both my mother and father at some point worked in textiles. Yeah, so we all had very similar upbringings. We ate the same foods. We went to the same feasts. We went to the same CCD classes, that kind of thing. But and even a lot of the commerce was Portuguese. So when we'd go shopping on the weekends with our parents, and we'd go to the bank and make a deposit, the tellers were Portuguese. The markets we went to were
Yeah.
Portuguese. The neighborhood I grew up in, um, at, when I was a kid, had at least five Portuguese markets, corner markets. These were like little Portuguese bodegas, so little convenience stores, but that had a real Portuguese focus. Some of them made tourism, others were, they made very specific things, and you sought them out for the very specific things that they made. But your parents would send you up to the store to grab things, and everyone knew each other. It was real kind of neighborly. It's changed a lot, the city, since then. The Portuguese people have sort of, they're still here, but they've moved out to the burbs as they've done better. And, they've just sort of, it's the natural kind of
Natural.
way
Say, yeah, it's very
yeah,
natural.
to go to where there's a little bit more land and you can build a house. So, but it still remains really Portuguese. I mean, at some point, I think it was something like 70% of the city was Portuguese descent, and primarily from San Miguel. Um, so yeah, but it was an interesting upbringing for sure. My father started the business when I was 11, and so that was interesting because most of my friends, their parents were factory workers. My father was sort of entrepreneur; he was trying to be his own boss. So that felt really inspiring to me at the time. Even I recall, wanting to tag along with my father because he was doing this different thing, and so it was fun. It was. I mean, my parents worked a lot. This was very common. Both my parents. My father,
Yeah.
you know, worked. He'd take all the overtime he could get before he started his business. My mother would do the same. They came here on a mission. My mother and my father. I mean, within 5 years they bought their first house. It was a multifamily, which is the house where we lived in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a six family house. So three stories side by side, two tenements in each, and we lived in one of them. And then we had five tenants, and in the back of that home is where we had a three-car garage, and my father saw that as an opportunity to start a business, and that's what he did. So yeah, so but it was a pretty unique upbringing, I would say. Now looking back,
Right.
obviously
When you're
very
in it,
different
it's
than
a
what
little
my kids
different.
are being raised in. Yeah,
Right. When you're in it, it's a little different than when you look
yeah,
back at it.
yeah,
But very similar, actually. I mean, when I hear about Massachusetts, that's the first thing. If you talk about Portuguese, like, oh, Fall River. Just like when they say Jersey, they say Newark and Elizabeth.
yeah, yeah,
Portuguese, which it's changed, but very similar. Like the grocery
yeah,
store I worked in when I was a kid, I didn't even have, you were expected to speak Portuguese and know your numbers because people would come to the register and whatnot. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I get the feeling.
but there was always this feeling of heritage and tradition when I was like in Newark or the way I grew up. And I feel that the what you just explained, the way your parents came over, they wanted to keep those traditions and that heritage and keep you grounded to the Portuguese roots. What were some of the foods and traditions that they really kept alive in like the household?
Yeah, so the foods, I mean, till this day, like bacalhau was always a staple in my house. We always had bacalhau, so and I'm the biggest fan. So, um, but there was a lot of like more like Azorian chicharros frites, like little, uh, almost like stick mackerel, jack mackerels that were fried. A lot of fish. We had a lot of fish in our diet. Not a whole lot of red meat, and a lot of obviously pork, right? But my mother would also occasionally buy like fresh chickens, and we'd pluck them in the backyard like the real
I,
discover that
I get it. I get it.
discovered that there were eggs in them. We'd soak them in the hot water and pluck the chickens, and then you'd have chicken feet and you'd make kanja with the chicken feet. And it was really, and then occasionally my father then would, when he had more time, he'd go fishing with my uncles, and whatever they would bring in the catch. My mother would either fry that fish or bake that fish.
Yeah.
So, and then festas were always, a lot of like casserole dishes, like a lot of bacalhau dishes. My mother would make pastéis de bacalhau, more like pataniscas de bacalhau than pastéis de bacalhau, but
Like more
those
flat and
exactly
yeah.
flat. Yeah,
We do
exactly.
the quenelle. I do the quenelles. Yeah.
Yeah. So she would make those. Those were outstanding. Her feijoada was incredible, and that is like even my kids absolutely adore that. So yeah, a lot of tradition, and she could bake as well. My mother, she could make really, she makes really great sweet bread, and some like traditional Azorian quejadas and things like that that were really great.
See, I'm surprised you
Yeah.
said the feijoada because, like, I view that as like from the north, like from the
Uh-huh.
mainland and stuff. So where my family's from, like the winter and stuff like that, that's something I look forward to. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I have a story in my cookbook that for my recipe for the feijoada,
Mhm.
I was turning 14 years old and we were having all the family over, and my mom's like, "Well, what do you guys want to make?" I was like, "I really want feijoada." Like, I was the only 14-year-old I think that would request that for her birthday, and
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
big panella was like cooked downstairs in the stove and was probably one of my favorites. So
It
I love.
is. It's great. No, and it's. I mean, in the Azores we do it, but it's. I've had it from the mainland and the north as well, and it has. You guys have a lot more cuts of pork in there,
Yes.
uh, and my mother's version was a little more simplified. Didn't have all those cuts, maybe because we didn't want like the pig ears and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was delicious no matter what. I mean, it was incredible. It's incredible. In fact, she still makes it, so it's super good.
There
Yeah,
is
so
something to be said about mom's cooking.
yeah, definitely. And then we have, my grandmother lived next door to us. So again, this six-family house where we had, and then my aunt and uncle lived on the second floor of that house. But my grandmother lived next door, so it was basically like an open door between my door and her door. We would just run across, the aisle, and not the aisle, but in the entryway. We just open our door, go into her house anytime. It was just, and vice versa. But my grandmother used to make the greatest malasadas, which like Azorian fried dough.
Yeah.
Those were incredible. She would make amazing masa too, especially around like certain holidays, Easter and religious type holidays.
Mhm.
Fat Tuesday, you always had malasadas. So her malasadas were the greatest. And my mother's done them, but they've never been duplicated. I don't think I've ever had malasadas as good as my grandmother's. I know it's maybe nostalgia as
Yeah,
well,
I get what you're saying, but
but
yeah.
it's emotional, but
Well,
her malasadas were
that's what food is. Food is all
absolutely.
nostalgia and what you remember and the stories that are told at the table and the people getting together. Like that's one of the reasons beyond that I love food and what I do is because that feeling and the way you light up when you're talking about it,
Absolutely.
it's so true because you can taste it, you can feel it. Like
Yep.
that's
It takes you back.
yeah. For me, it's rebanadas at
Yeah.
Christmas,
Yeah.
and I could devour 20 plates of them, but no one makes them like my grandmother.
Okay. Yeah. Those are great. That's not something I grew up with, but
Yeah.
I've come to like them and from the mainland. I've had them in the mainland, but they're super good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about business.
Hmm.
Now, I know you say it started in Dad's garage, which sounds like the truest immigrant story intro, you know? Now, when he first started, do you remember doing things with him or wanting to be engaged with that business? Because you're really the face of it now.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I have very, very vivid and fond memories of like this. I was 11, and I remember being tagging along with my father. If I wanted to spend time with my father, it was working. But it didn't feel like work. It felt like an adventure every day. So we'd get in the car and the truck. So we started Portugalia Imports was our first business, which was an import and distribution company where we imported product from Portugal and we sold to restaurants and markets locally. So that's how we started. But that wasn't enough to make ends meet initially. So my father started doing a little bit of retail out of that three-car garage. Questionably whether it was legal or not, but but it was just like we were selling bulk, so it was people coming to us and saying, "Hey, can I buy a case of codfish? Can I buy a case of azeit, olive oil?" So that was the business model we had. So we were kind of like a very, very, very micro BJ's Costco of Portuguese products.
In the garage.
Yeah, exactly, in the garage, and we weren't selling necessarily units. We were interested in selling you a case. Um, and that's how the business started. But again, I have very fond memories of that time. Initially, also we went a lot to Jersey when I was a kid because my father started developing relationships with other people in the business. There's a bunch of importers down in Jersey, so we started going to Jersey in the beginning because we didn't have any namesake. We weren't, we were a small company. Nobody knew who we were. So you have to build this
But it
credibility.
is a tight, the Portuguese community that I've really realized even growing up, because my dad, entrepreneur, you know, started his own business. I did not want to go into his business as a family business, but hard work and all that comes across in the Portuguese community. And like you see that, and I realize now by even meeting you and other people, it's a close knit community. And like I always use the expression, one hand washes the other, but we all want each other to succeed and do well
Correct.
because the pride that we have for the Portuguese community is huge. And I think that shows across the board when it comes to like the work ethic and the business and the relationships you build.
That's correct. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and that's that's how we developed this business. Like we went, to Jersey, we started meeting people, we started meeting other importers because we were small, we were in a three-car garage. We didn't have the ability to import large scale.
Right.
So we started like establishing these relationships, made good friends along the way. And I would recall as a kid in my summer vacations jumping in the truck with my father. Then we didn't even have our own vehicle, our own trucks. We would jump in a rider truck, a rental, drive down to Jersey early in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, be down there by 7, 8 in the morning, load up the truck. My father would spend hours with these folks doing business, conversating. I was just there kicking tires, as a kid, just
Getting
kind
in
of bored out
trouble.
of my mind. Okay, are we done yet? But that was some of the most, informative years. Like, that was without me knowing mentorship. It was me sort of observing and watching my father conduct business. And later on in life, you realize that has a significant impact on me growing up and me wanting to be involved in the business and wanting to do so. I've been there at every phase of the business. I saw that struggle. I saw this, getting lost and looking at like road atlases in Newark, trying to find a warehouse that's on this random street because there was no GPS at the time.
Right. It's the map would come
Yeah.
out and
And then we would do all this before like 11 11 in the morning usually because we'd have to be back on the road because my father had to punch in at the time. He had to punch in a clock at 3 o'clock because he worked second shift in the factory, right? So this was the example I had. It
yeah.
was we're in New Jersey at the crack of dawn. We're doing business. We're back here. We're unloading the truck, and my father's getting getting changed a change of clothing, going off to his second job, working from 3 to 11 in that second job, getting at home at 11, a little after 11, beat, exhausted from a very long day. And he would do this like it's unbelievable. Like I'd say to myself, like thinking about it now, it was like Superman. Like
Yeah.
he would work two jobs, like 80-hour weeks, and he did that for years and years and years. So I witnessed this, I saw this, and it was amazing to see. It obviously left a big impression on me, and then that the business as the business evolved, I felt I never felt pressure to go into the business, but I felt like uh, this is my heritage. This is there's been so much blood, sweat, and tears poured into this place.
You're part of it.
Uh, yeah, and so my summers were spent working in the business. After school was spent working in the business. Same goes through high school. My high school years were the same way. While my friends were at the beach, oftentimes I was, driving around, delivering things, taking orders, servicing customers. And then I went to college, and that same thing. I was a commuter. I went to Johnson and Wales, not for culinary, but for business management. And I would commute. I'd come back and work a shift at the business. And then when I graduated from college, I went to work in a business. Again, this to say that yeah, I had to if I wanted to spend any time with my father, it was tagging along in the business, but it felt to me like an adventure. Like every day was a different day, and that's I think entrepreneurship in a way. Like you're always going to uh, uh, encounter different things on any given day, and it's how you deal with those things on any given day because everything was new. Everything was new for him. He'd never owned a business before, so he was starting from scratch. My father's a pretty good like he's a saver and he's a good numbers guy. So he was always very very strategic with how he was spending his money and
Yeah.
um, yeah. So again, I learned a ton as a kid from him, but some people will ask you like, oh, you missed your childhood, or like you weren't playing sports or this and that. To me, no, I was learning business. So I truthfully, the business is 37 years old, but I've worked in this business for 37 years, and I can honestly say that. So
No, that's
it's
amazing because I think that not only does it's your relationship, but we really do value family and having each other's back and that pride that comes with now that you've been in this business and you've seen it grow to, I mean, what it is now is amazing.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. No, and that's why I decided to continue to work in the business, because I felt like I could contribute. I felt like, my father had certainly done a really good job at building a business, building a base, building a foundation. Um,
But there
but
was a big leap now because it
yeah,
came from wholesale importing to a full on food and culture destination to go and like immerse yourself in Portuguese. What made you transform that business that started in the garage to what it is now?
yeah. So that's again, like I'm a person who's very inspired by. Well, I love to travel, so that's a huge inspiration for me. Um, and I started traveling to Portugal probably when I was like, I had been as a kid to the Azores a few times with my parents, but I started traveling to the Azores with more regular to the mainland with more regularity when I was say 18. And then, I just, when I would go to Portugal, I would see, to me, it just reeked of opportunity, in a sense, like this, there was so much there that wasn't here. And how can I started seeing how things, the concepts, and various business models. And then in that time, I also got married. I got married when I was 23, almost 24, so I got married pretty young. My in-laws are from the south of France. So my wife is American born, but my in-laws are French immigrants. And I traveled a few times to France with my in-laws as well. And I would, and again, I'd become very inspired by the markets I saw in France, and in food and the culture, and how important food was in their culture as well. And so these, Portugal, France, just anywhere I travel, I would seek out food spots, food shops, food, markets, anything related to food. Um, and I would just store this information in the back of my head, or would like make mental notes of things that I saw along the way. Um, and so we operated our previous. So we were in the three car garage for about 3 years. We moved it to a second location, which is an old soda factory that a gentleman was closing. At one point, there was like a soda delivery business in Fall River. I don't know if this was a thing in Jersey, but it was like locally made soda pop,
Mhm.
right? People would make them in 1 liter bottles, glass bottles, and then they would deliver these to your home on a weekly basis. This
Cool.
was like a cheaper alternative to the Coca
Cola,
Cola,
yeah.
yeah, and all that. But this was like, look, now this stuff is like desired. Everyone wants like craft soda.
Yeah,
But
the
then
natural sugar and
that,
syrups.
yeah, then that was craft soda, but no one wanted it. Everyone wanted everyone wanted the brand name
The
soda.
shiny commercials that were on and
Yeah,
yeah.
but the Portuguese community, this is, this basically, this business existed for them, but it was kept alive by the Portuguese community. But as it phased out, this gentleman had this building, this 3-story building, and he said, "Look, I'm getting out of the business." And he approached my father and he says, "I have this building. It's great for you." And my father said, "I don't have the capital to do this." He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll bankroll it. You pay me." Handshake.
Old
The way
school.
Portu- the way Portuguese deals were
Yeah,
done.
old school.
Yeah, it was a handshake. So it was 100% a handshake. I think that building was like 100,000, $110,000. It was really inexpensive. Well, then it didn't seem
That
so.
yeah, for that
Yeah.
time, it seemed like a lot.
Uh, right. It seemed like a lot. So we bought that building. We moved the business from the 3-car garage to that building. We operated in that building, but that building was on a weird one-way street. But it had a couple of properties in front of it that led to a main street, Bedford Street. So over time, we acquired those properties, leveled those properties, and then bought ourselves an access point from that main street. And then that's where our business really started to flourish. The retail market, even at that location, started to turn into something. Now it wasn't a retail market in the conventional sense. It was still very much this artisan concept, warehouse concept. It looked very much like a warehouse. Didn't look like a storefront. In fact, many people were wondering what was happening in there. There was no like storefront glass or windows or
Right.
anything like that. It just looked like a brick building that had a lot of traffic, had a lot of cars in the yard and movement. So we had a very successful run there. We ran that place for about 20 some odd years. And then, uh, we were looking for expansion opportunities. At this point, I'm pestering my father almost on a regular basis about expanding. We need to expand. We need to, this was years after I had graduated from college. I'm saying we need to expand. And so we're looking at how are we going to expand. So at this point we had two options. We could either become a bigger wholesaler, importer, wholesaler, distributor, or we could go into retail. So we looked at a couple of options in both ends of the business, and we decided to go the retail route. And the reason why we chose the retail route was that this building that we're in had sat abandoned for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. Initially, when we looked at it, it was way out of reach in terms of what they wanted for it, the realtor. But it sat dormant for 2 years, 3 years. So they had no choice but to drop the price on it. Then it became attractive to us. So my father and I, you know, through our accountant, he said, "Hey, I know you guys are looking at buildings, this and that, but that building, it's been sitting there for a while. I know the guy who knows the realtor. I'll put you guys in touch. You guys can go look at that building. I think you can get it for a much better price than what they're currently asking." So we came to look at it, and when my father and I walked through the building, we couldn't like it was hard for us to contain the excitement. We had to kind of, like nudge each other, like when
Like
everyone was
don't show you want it too
right,
much. Don't
exactly,
let them know you want
right,
it.
exactly. So we had to be like because I knew as soon as I walked in this building, it was a perfect fit
That's
for what
awesome.
we were doing because we didn't want a cookie cutter business. We wanted, we had started in that three-car garage. We had moved to an old soda factory, also another like three-story brick
Mhm.
building, always unconventional spaces. And then this was an old textile mill. So it was like, okay, perfect. It's exactly what we're looking for. It had these beautiful archways. So then, at that point, we decided, okay, we're going to do this. And my father gives me pretty much carte blanche to do the business, to do this build out. Like he's saying, okay, you're going to handle this. I had lobbied
You're
for
up.
this.
It's your turn now.
Yeah, keep in mind, I had lobbied for this. I wanted this. I was saying, okay, we need to do this. The previous business that we had was 99.9% ethnic, meaning everyone who walked through that door was a Portuguese speaker. First generation. We weren't even getting the second and third generation at that market. Most of the people were my parents' peers, the demographics in that market.
Right.
So the writing was on the wall for me in terms of succession at that location. Like it didn't look good, right? It didn't look like we weren't, it was very much my father's business. And I wanted something where I could put my stamp on it, and that's when again my father gave me carte blanche to do this, and he says you're up. And in many ways he could have at that point retired because he had some money that he had built over the course of time, and he had a comfortable little nest egg. But he financed a big chunk of this business, and then of course we got some bank financing. But that just showed that he had a lot of faith in my ability to do this. And keep in mind, I had never done anything like this. I mean, in terms of a remodel project, the only thing I had ever done was a kitchen in my house.
Okay.
Now we're talking about building out a whole building that's 20,000 square feet with multiple kitchens and a cafe concept and this and that and the other thing. Of course, we had builders involved, contractors
Right.
involved, but I had to be I was very involved, far more involved than I expected to be in that process to get exactly what I wanted. Uh,
But
so
your concept here is a little bit more modern, and I say this with like all the respect, but like
Mhm.
Portuguese people sometimes are set in their ways and very traditional and kind of little old world. So getting them to come into this more progressive, this more up to date, newer
Yep,
vibe, dude, that's a big risk. Like you're
it was.
changing this concept that comfortability. Like, we have the markets here too, but if when things change,
Yeah,
people aren't open to it. I'm surprised. Like, I love that your father was like, no, go. I want you
yeah.
to have your vision, but it's business, and it's a chance, a big risk to take.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, I felt it. I felt the pressure because it was like, okay, keep in mind, we went from a 4,000 square foot store to a 20,000 square foot store overnight. We closed up our old market on a Wednesday. We opened up the new market on a Thursday.
Wow.
So if you went to the old market on that Thursday, you saw a sign on the door that says, "We're no longer here. Go visit us at the new location." So, and if you walk into the new market, just on scale alone, you run the risk of like losing some people. Some of the
Really?
old ladies
Right.
who can, when they walk into the old market, they could scan the room in one like glance. Now here there were like there was a lot going on, so we had to make sure if there was any gripe ever throughout the process. It was never a gripe. My father and I always had a really good understanding. But if there was any, thing, he was very protective of his base, my father, and I knew that, and I knew that as well. Like I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot. I knew that we had to bring over the base. The base was essential. The base had was the reason why we were able to do what we were going
Right.
to do.
The fundamental.
Without them, we don't exist.
Right.
So this investment happens based on the confidence that we have with the base.
And you've built a
Uh,
strong relationship with those clients that have repeatedly been patrons and invested and wanted to be there. So you're going to turn that over to the next phase.
exactly, 100%. And so, my father he had done so much good work with building this space. My father's a people person. He really connects with his customers, and he's treated them really well over the course of 25 years. He prides himself tremendously on during that 25-year run, never spending a cent on advertising because it
That's
was
something to be
all
said
word of
for that.
mouth. It was all treat Lauren really well, and then Lauren's going to bring her friends, and then her friends, and her cousins, and her aunts, and this and that, and that's how that business was built.
It's
Like
true.
a
Yeah.
whole lot of FaceTime before FaceTime. It was just spending time with customers and addressing their needs, and so that's what he did.
Well, he
And it
built
was
trust with them. If he
exactly
said to them, you got to go get this because it's so good. And well, of course I do. Because he says, the trust that he built in that relationship is where, and at the end of the day, these are the things that people are buying. They're bringing into their homes. They're feeding their families. They're incorporating them in their holidays. If it's from a platter to some bacalhau,
yeah.
it's what you're bringing into your house. So he built that trust, which is amazing.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. I mean, so these customers, he had, these were our customers, and they knew me as well. Of course, they knew because I always, like I said, I always worked in the business, so I was always behind the counter. I was here, I was there, so I wasn't a stranger to them. So this didn't feel like really disruptive,
Yeah, no,
but
you built the community.
yeah, but what we did was when we opened up the market, my father, my father was at the door. He was the Walmart greeter at Portugalia. He was going to make sure that his customers knew it wasn't his kid running wild, right? He was there to kind of ease them in and show them around. Like he was giving personal tour after personal tour after personal tour. This is where you get your cheese now. This is where you get your salt cod. Oh, look, now we have a cafe. We didn't have that at the previous market. Oh, look, we have wines. We didn't have that at the previous market. We also have prepared foods. We didn't have that at the previous market. So he was walking around basically, introducing people to the new market. And I was doing some part of that as well. And what happened is, as soon as those old, long, lifelong customers walked in for the first time to the market, it was almost like it was very touching. There was a lot of touching moments. It was a really it was a lot of hugs, kisses. It was a lot of pride, is what it was. If
Yeah.
you had to define what it was pride. It was these people feeling like they had supported you over the course of time.
But you built a community, I think, is the biggest thing, and they feel part of it.
Exactly. And they felt like, wow, this is in some way they felt a part of of our success because they were instrumental to our success. So but they felt it in a way like emotionally. So they walk into space, and the space has a lot of, thematically, the space has a lot of Portuguese themes and the music and the sounds and the scents, and intentionally so. They felt a tremendous amount of pride. So what happens is within a day or two or three, they're bringing in their children. They're that second generation, they're bringing them to the market, and this, they're going home and they're saying, "Hey, you guys got to go check out Portugalia." And the kids are saying, "No, I've been there before. That place smells like fish or whatever." To this market, and no, and then now they're bringing their kids and their grandkids, and then that second generation becomes very like reconnected to their roots. Like, wow, I had no idea that Portugal had all this to offer, because we opened up this market. Our previous market again was small. We had so much shelf space at this market compared to our previous market, so we had to fill the shelves. Now, keep in mind we're importers, so what we did was we doubled down and tripled down on a lot of the categories that Portugal is known for, right? So we built this really big and beautiful wine section, where most of the Portuguese wines available at the time, you'd walk into a wine shop, and there was, even if it was a Portuguese wine shop, there was a little section. It wasn't a very big section. No, we went
Or
out and
no education about it.
Right. We went out and we sourced as many Portuguese wines as we could, and we loaded the shelves. So we did the same thing with tinned fish. We did the same thing with olive oil. If you went again to previous markets, you would walk in, there was maybe four different brands of olive oil. Soloio, Andreina, the usual
Yeah.
suspects. No, we were like, yes, we have those four, and those four are prominently displayed, but then we have so much more. So we just, people walked in, and then, and then we were showing different tiers of Portugal as well. People were used to like just kind of a average tier, mid tier to low, but they weren't used to seeing premium wines or premium olive oils or premium products from Portugal. When I say premium, artisanal, high quality, higher price points. And that second generation, as you know, and that third generation is better off than their parents, right?
Right.
They have, degrees and advanced degrees, and they work and they're assimilated. So we're giving them opportunities to gift their culture to coworkers and this and that. So they come in and they see Portuguese wines, and typically some Portuguese at that point were drinking other wines. They were drinking Italian wines. They were drinking French wines. They were drinking California wines, because there wasn't a lot of great Portuguese wine offerings. So we started showing them, no, like look at all these amazing wines, transmitting education to these folks, like letting them know, like, look at it. And what people realize is that, wow, there's so much more to Portugal that I didn't know existed.
I think
And that,
Portugal is underestimated so much sometimes.
well, I feel you. That's the reason why
Yeah.
a portion of Portugalia, the like the impetus, the sort of the driving force is that to show that Portugal has so much more to offer than people know. And that's in that those trips that I'm going to regularly to Portugal,
Hmm.
seeing, like, I'm saying, this is not on the market, this is not on the market, this is not on the market. Looking at seeing all these products that are not on the market, and the reason why they weren't on the market is because maybe that first generation doesn't consume those tiers of product. These are also new tiers
But
of
it's also
products.
the younger generation that's working and changing and bringing the exposure of these products to light. And now people like
Right.
you, you're going and bringing them here to the States so that that's why I think Portugal is one of the biggest travel places and destinations right now. Biggest place people are buying properties, and they're being exposed to these amazing products and these artisanal products that they didn't realize, because the exposure is there now, and places like Portugalia is there and able to showcase it.
That's right. Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, that's what that's the driving force. Is like I'm just saying, like, Portugal is underrepresented in the communities, and for years and years and years, the Portuguese importers and markets, like we were, like all of us were in the same boat. We're always hyper focused on servicing our own, right? So it was like a Portuguese market for Portuguese people, and it always felt a little foreign for a foreigner to walk inside that market. He was always a little bit like lost, or
Intimidated, I think.
yeah, intimidated by the salt fish counter or this or that. And what we tried to do at this market was not demystify, but like to remove some of that intimidation by the way we merchandise, by the way we made things much more approachable, by having people on the floor who can speak about some of these goods. So that's really, and as a result of that, it was a game changer. Like, we completely changed the game in a way, how people perceive Portuguese food. Like, we've introduced so many people in this market who are not Portuguese to Portuguese food. And that's inspired trips to Portugal. We've had customers tell us that, I came to this market 10 years ago when you opened, and then like I buy things and we finally booked a trip to Portugal. We can't wait to go there. This, in many ways, this market became an introduction to Portugal for a lot of people, uh, which was, again, really like amazing. And that's one of the biggest compliments that people can pay me. Or even one of the biggest compliments that I get is, it's not even a compliment, is seeing a customer here at 9 in the morning and still seeing that same customer here at noon.
Yeah.
That customer's been here for 3 hours. Like they're so in it. They're so in. I've seen this. I've
Pulling
seen
stuff
this,
off the shelf, reading, looking, going down
and I'm like,
different
holy,
aisles.
that customer's still in this market. And that to me is like, okay, that's amazing. Like the fact that this customer is willing to dedicate multiple hours of their life to to discovering the market and what's in it is a huge compliment to me. And it's not even a compliment. Like it's not someone coming up to me and saying
Right. No,
something.
very much. I think so. Very
It's
much
just
so.
me. It's just me witnessing this whole, like, wow, this customer's been in the market just hanging out, reading labels, going up and down the aisles, going into the wine section, really doing a deep dive into what the market represents. So that's a huge compliment for me.
And you guys do different like events there. You host stuff. I know that you've had some amazing people like Maria Lawton. Like I just did a
Yeah,
podcast with her, George
yeah.
Mendez, Mark.
Maria's great.
She is amazing. I
Yeah,
I can talk to her for hours.
yeah, yeah.
Marcus Samuelson, like those moments when you get to have these great names come in and these events that you put on, do you get really good feedback from the community from that, and like what sticks out to you with those moments?
Yeah, I mean, there's Maria, who's really beloved in our community, and sure, people love Maria, and when we have a signing with her, people turn out, and people queue up and wait patiently for their little time with her. It's great. I mean, it's all part of the mission of the business
Right.
is to promote the culture, right? I always say we don't sell food, we sell culture. I really believe that. I really, I do. We do everything we do sort of with a cultural lens. So these events are designed for this. These events are designed to promote the culture, to do outreach to. Maria does really well with that second gen, third gen, fourth generation Portuguese. She, that's her wheelhouse. So and some of these sort of newer chefs, different audiences. The media stuff, like the Marcus Samuelson stuff, the PBS stuff, has been like absolute gold for the business.
Right.
What it does for the business is it reaches completely different audiences than we don't have, right? So
Well, you're
it's just,
introducing that Portuguese culture to those audiences. They're getting pulled in, and now they're exploring and realizing how beautiful it is, all that it has to offer. So, yes, reaching those other
exactly.
audiences.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it does. It really, like the Marcus Samuelson PBS show. Uh, it doesn't start there. Like our very first national media piece was in Savora magazine, and it was like a three-page spread, and it was a journalist, uh, Luke Pyenson.
Okay.
He reached out. He came through the market. He says, "Hey, I was in your market. I loved what you guys do. I'm a big tin fish guy. You guys have a lot of tin fish." This guy, he's a freelance writer, but he's also a drummer in an indie rock band in Brooklyn. And so he tours Europe with his band, uh, and when they go to Portugal, they would like load up on tin fish. They would fill their bags with tin fish and transport it back. And so one of his friends discovered that we had a lot of tin fish and reached in when we went back to New York, said, "Hey, you got to hit this market on your next trip up to the Cape." So this is what happens with the market. We have, like, in the summertime, there's a fair amount of people from New York traveling to Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And so we have a fair amount of that traffic that comes into the market, which is amazing. And it probably has a lot to do with media coverage. But in any event, Luke wrote this beautiful article, and that's really like the first time we get like national media recognition, and that felt like a pinch me moment. And it was like, wow, this is like a food publication that's like real, like food,
Right.
uh and
Being
they
acknowledged.
we're being acknowledged by the food world, and that feels really good. uh and I really believe that is what is the reason why when PBS is then scouting for the No Passport Required show, they come across that article because that article really helps your SEO on your
Oh,
Google where you come up and stuff. So they found us and they reached out and said, "Hey, we're shooting this segment and Marcus and so on." So and I said, "Okay, yeah, absolutely." I knew who Marcus was. So and that segment was amazing. That aired and that airs nationally. That's nationally syndicated. It re-airs every time it re-airs. We get a little bump. It's incredible. Overnight, people start coming out to the market when they see that. And then from there, we've been on a couple of other PBS shows, and soon to be on one in November. So it's been a whirlwind of like
no, that's and today's world with, I mean, social media, Instagram, all these different ways to expose. Like you can, in essence, get in everyone's household and all new audiences in front of you with just the simple of a phone and someone tagging you and sharing and opening it. And I feel like a business like this, it opens so many doors with all of those avenues.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we're definitely a recipient of like social media and all this national media coverage, and then also we're benefiting from the fact that Portugal is a destination as well. You
And
know,
curiosity. I think that people have more curiosity now about
yeah,
the culture.
more so than ever, because Portugal's so topical now, right? Like people, it's so conversational. People, their kids are studying abroad, or there's or their neighbor went, or their coworker went to Portugal, or their boss went to Portugal. Someone's going to
Yeah.
Portugal. You survey a room right now, but this wasn't the case 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Arguably, like, not at all. Like quite the
Oh,
opposite. Like
no.
if you survey a room 10 years ago, and you say, people would think Portugal's a province of Spain, which is we've heard this dozens of
But
times.
you're Spanish. No,
Yeah,
Portuguese.
yeah. Right. So, but now it's so and this is like I don't want to plug here, but
Yeah.
I think the access to Portugal has never been greater. Like TAP flying from all the hubs that it has
Yeah.
is really helping. Obviously, Americans get to Portugal. There's now flights from Boston, Chicago, New York,
Everywhere. Yeah.
Newark,
Oh, everywhere.
Washington D.C., Miami, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. That level of access to Portugal is a game changer. It puts Portugal on people's radar because before you had to connect. You had to connect either through Jersey or Boston to get to Portugal.
Right.
Now you can go direct, and that access, I think, really changed the game for Portugal as a destination for Americans. And then Americans go there again.
Beautiful country.
It exceeds expectations. I
Mhm.
think I always say Portugal exceeds expectations. You go there with maybe limited expectations or some expectations, and then it exceeds your expectations. They also did that stopover program that I think was very influential. They took a page out of the Iceland playbook where they convinced flyers on their way to Portugal on their way to somewhere else, say because TAP has a pretty extensive network in Europe, to stop in Portugal for 3 to 4 days with no additional fees. And so what happens is you get a taste of Portugal, for 3 days,
Right.
and then you realize like there's so much more to discover. All you got was a sampling of Portugal in 3 days, and now you come back and you say, "I wish I would have spent more
You
time in
want more.
Portugal."
You want to go and explore. And there's so much to explore. You can do from the south to the north to the Azores. Like there's a little bit of everything for everyone.
Yeah. So the marketing in Portugal has gotten significantly better. They now understand how to market themselves far greater than they ever have in the past. Visit Portugal has done a great job. So all these entities are playing a pretty significant role. We play a role as well. You, as an ambassador of the food, play a significant role. So yeah, we have there's a few of us now, quite a few of us
Yes.
now. So there's and it didn't exist. This didn't ha- this wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago.
No, not at
Never
all.
mind, never mind 20 years ago. There was no representation, very limited representation. So yeah, so we're certainly in a much better place now.
And I feel that, so when I wrote my cookbook, it's all my mom and my grandmother's, the food I grew up on. But the way you just said that, I tried to modernize it a little bit. And it's something me and Maria talked about was, she's like, I wanted to stay completely traditional. And I said, well, the problem was for me, my generation now, of people that I'm trying to introduce kind of shy away from some of the old traditional stuff. So if I give it a more spin or approachable way, then it's going to be integrated and they're going to start to get a little taste of things. Then they're going to explore more. Then they're going to, when they want to travel there. And yes, you're right. These companies that are coming out and bringing such recognition to the country, like we're working with Sagas Vacations
Hmm.
and we're going to do a trip in October. And the thing is, I said, this is amazing because you're trying to pull people in and you're building that community to travel over there and you're getting the second, the third, the fourth generation business owners that want people to know about the Portuguese involved.
Yeah. No, again, travel has been, it's really, what happened to, say, other cultures, Italy and Spain most recently. A lot of people went to Spain over the last 20 years or so,
Right.
Barcelona, and that really bumped up their Spanish food cuisine because, the gastronomy really blew up in America, right? So there's Spanish restaurants everywhere, and I feel like, now it's our turn. But in years past, it was, Americans who wanted a little bit of culture, wanted a little bit of, they would go to Italy, they would go to France. Now Portugal is the place that everyone wants to go, and we're seeing like genuine fans of Portugal. We're seeing Americans who come into the market who are super fans of Portugal, who know in some cases more about Portugal than you and I, and we're
Right.
Portuguese. They visited this and they visited that, and they have, they're coming with cell phones loaded with photos of quintas they went to and things that they did and experiences that they had, and it's all good. It's like the enthusiasm is high, and that's good. And we just have to keep it. We have to
Oh,
keep it going.
100%.
Yeah.
So with that, let me ask you, anything next with Portugalia? Any
Well,
more growth? I mean, your story is definitely all about growth and going and
yeah.
being bigger and better.
Well, certainly, like we're growth minded, but we want to be sort of, uh, conscious. Like we want to do it responsibly. Our e-commerce has really, performed well, and we want to continue to do that. So we're working at expanding our offerings there and having better conditions to do more fulfillment with that end of the business. But who knows what the future holds? But I mean, definitely want to, grow the brand. I think this opportunity to do so. Uh, like I said, Portugal is it's it's still hot. It's still very hot. I don't see the fever going away anytime soon. As long as we can maintain that and we can play a role in that.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, but we're definitely got some things up our sleeves that we're working on. But for now, I don't want to disclose
No worries.
anything
I'll
specifically.
listen.
But
I'll be there in July, and I'll keep poking. So it's all
yeah,
right.
yeah, and
Uh,
we're looking forward to having you. It's going to be
I'm
a good
so
time.
excited.
Yeah, yeah.
So something I like to do, and we've done, is a little quick fire round, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Just around five different little questions, and it's the first thing that comes off the top of your head.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Portuguese dish?
Bacalhau for sure.
Any way,
Any version
certain,
of it.
because
Well, so bacalhau alagredo, like grilled,
mhm.
simple bacalhau. I love that. That's one of my personal favorites.
I like one of mine is the con potato muru, and
Yes, that's yeah.
because I love
And
pepper salad, and I think that with the big chunks of garlic, it's perfect.
that's yeah.
Most underrated Portuguese ingredient.
Most underrated Portuguese ingredient. Oof, that's a tough one. Um, I know it's supposed to be like a fire round,
No, you're good.
but I think, I mean, our olive oils are appreciated, but I still think they're underappreciated. I think that I've never tasted better olive oils, and I've
That's
tasted
agreed.
panels of olive oil. So I think that's still one of those ingredients and we convert a lot of people to Portuguese olive oils. So I would say olive oil.
Yeah, that would be mine as well. And it's funny because in the States I feel like you get Italian and Greek and like
Yeah,
I'm like, have you had Portuguese olive oil? I'm like,
right.
you could drink it. It's so good.
And anyone who does, it's like, oh wow, this is
Oh yeah,
amazing.
they
So
can definitely. Best time of year to visit Portugal?
I really like the fall,
Me too.
September, October harvest. I've been to a few wine harvests
Yes,
that are exceptional,
the
and the
Benevides.
weather's always perfect.
It's the perfect weather because it's not too hot. The summers are
Yeah,
beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
they're very crowded.
Exactly.
summers, but I love the fall as well. Top selling product at the marketplace.
Um, I would say we sell a lot of cured meats and cheese and wines. So it's top three.
Okay, like the old
Those three,
charcuterie board.
yeah, those three categories are really our top performing categories. And tins have come up
Well,
significantly
tin
as well.
fish is hot right now.
Very hot. Yeah.
Very hot right now. Okay, so in the marketplace, what's one thing that you have on your shelves that you think that people really don't know about, but is so good that you wish that they did know about?
Um, let's see. Ooh, that's again. There's so much here. One ingredient that's in the market. I mean, we have like a lot of people know about it, but it's a pimenta moída. It's like an Azorian condiment, but I still think a lot of people don't know about it. But m- most Portuguese Azorians, especially, are familiar with it. It's a like a pepper relish,
Okay,
and a lot of Azorians use it to spice up stocks and
like a
a
condiment.
base. Yeah, you would use it as a condiment. It's
Okay,
a so it's a crushed pepper, like it looks like a relish. And we have a couple of different brands, and we even have our own brand. We have a packer that makes it for us. But I think that that's a product that I've turned a lot of people on to, that I want more people to consume, because I think it's a pretty great product. Once you taste it, it has like the right amount of heat, a little bit of acid. It works really well on tin fish, but it also works great on eggs. It's just a great product.
awesome. So when I'm there in July, I want to be able to try that.
Pimenta muy yeah.
And I'm the first one. We'll sit down, big piece of bread, and we'll just start opening up the tin fish.
Tons. Yeah, we have tons. We have over 400 SKUs of tin fish. So
And
brace yourself.
I think that's something that's super underrated, but it's
Yeah,
coming. It's really being shown now in the marketplace.
no question.
So no, I honestly thank you for jumping on here and taking the time today. I feel like you and I could talk about food for hours.
It does, no, yeah, there's no doubt about it. And we will, to be continued.
Yes,
The
July 26th, I'll be there. We'll pop a couple bottles of wine.
26th. I'm sorry. I said 27th.
Oh yeah, 26th.
Yeah.
And hopefully, come out, meet and greet, do some great stuff. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and Portugal Marketplace online?
Sure. So yeah, it's portugaliamarketplace.com. And we're located at 489 Bedford Street in Fall River, Massachusetts. So we're 20 minutes uh, west of east rather of Providence, an hour south of Boston. And we, like I said, we sell online. So there's about 1,500 products on there, lots and lots of tins. Pimenta muitas on there. Our olive oils are on there. So people can get a taste. If they can't come into the market, they can certainly get a taste through the website.
All right, great. And we'll put all the links in and everything so people can
Awesome.
find you really easily.
Well,
Thank
it's
you
a
for your
pleasure.
time. I really
Thank you so much.
appreciate it. Great, amazing story. It like such tugs at the heart for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you and chatting some more.
Yes, awesome. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. This has been From Portugal with Love, and I'm your host, Lauren Covas. This podcast was produced by Curious Monkey Entertainment. Please don't forget to hit subscribe. And until next time, always remember, savor the moment.